Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Dental Confidential. I'm so excited today to have Dr. Tarryn MacCarthy with me, whom I am meeting for the first time, like
Oh, so good. So good.
virtually.
Yeah.
So thrilled. A little bit about her. She is an orthodontist, a rapid transformational therapist, author, keynote speaker, and host of the Business of Happiness podcast and mom to three world changers. I
Yeah.
love that. In her own 25-year career in dentistry and coaching, Dr. Tarryn has proven that we can't hustle or intellectualize our way into feeling better. Holla! That's why she helps women like you transform your life and your career so that you can get to where you want to go without doing more or working harder. Welcome,
Yeah.
welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored. I've been looking forward to this day all week, Jessica. Thank you for having me on the show.
I am so excited. So, y'all, we were just talking and having a conversation. I'm like, I just have to press record because there is so much goodness here. Let's just go back. We were just talking about attachment, and I do want to definitely touch on that. But first, I feel like we have to go back to where your story started and how you got to where you are now, because I know there's a story there, when you had started as an orthodontist. And yeah, take us back first actually to when you became interested in teeth. I always love to start there. When did you fall in love with dentistry or know that that was your first calling of many?
It's so funny. And thank you for asking, by the way, but I don't think I ever fell in love with teeth,
Mhm.
interestingly enough. And I love it when I meet people. Don't you love it when you meet someone and she's like, oh my gosh, I love teeth. I've always loved
Yeah.
teeth. I love that passion.
Ah.
I don't think I really ever had that passion for teeth, but I had a passion for people always,
Mhm.
ever since I was really little, and a passion for making people smile. And I was
Mhm.
never the
Love that.
comedian, I love to be on stages, but I think that was a big part, just making people happy. That was a really big part of my journey since I was little.
Mhm.
And when I fell in love with the path towards dentistry, I think it was combining science and artistry and entrepreneurship. I think that's what took me to dentistry. I was like, okay, here I can use my math brain and my science brain. And I was a minor in sculpture and I was a musician and an artist. And I was like, oh, this will bring it together. Plus entrepreneurship and freedom
Yes,
and
of course.
autonomy, that it was that magical combination. And I remember working so hard towards that dream, thinking, oh, I finally found this magical combination. I'm going to work so hard towards it that I pushed so hard in dental school and neglected my body, neglected relationships, turned down really important occasions like weddings and funerals and graduations of family members. And
Mm.
just to get to the end of dental school, like I kept telling myself, I'll finally live my life. I'll be happy when I get to the end of dental school. And then I got there, I wasn't quite feeling happy as a dentist. I was like, oh, it's ortho. When I'm an
Uh,
orthodontist, I'll be
mhm.
happy when I'm an
When?
orthodontist. Yep. And that day came round, and then I found myself in this associateship. I was like, oh, this is miserable. Oh, I'll be happy when I own a practice. And bought
Mhm.
my first practice, and the stress really started compiling.
Sure.
And then I thought, oh my gosh, it's motherhood. I'll be happy when I'm a mom.
My gosh. Yes,
But
right. Oh my
haven't
gosh.
we all
Add.
told ourselves the story, right? Like, I'll be
Of
happy
course.
when I pay off my student loan debt. I'll be happy when I finally have a team of, dedicated team members
Yes.
and
Yep.
keep putting it off. And I was doing that for decades. And one day I got to this place where I was so stressed out and overwhelmed and unhappy because I'd never allowed myself to focus on taking care of me. I was
Sure.
always taking care of everyone else and running a million miles an hour, trying so hard to make it work. And I burnt down. And for me, what that looked like was running away. And I fire sailed my practice. I fled the state. I went to a divorce attorney. I literally, Jessica, I'm
Wait,
not kidding
what?
you.
How
I
old were your
burned
kids?
the
Did you
house
have kids?
down.
Did you have
I had
kids? That's a
two
that's a
babies. two
Oh,
babies in
this is a true
diapers.
burn the house down.
No, I'm not kidding you. And I've said this before. I think I would have run away from my kids if I could have. I was
No, well, I had, did you have a nanny? No.
no,
Oh,
no.
oh, see, I outsourced that, but I remember feeling, I think we all do feel like that at some point.
I mean, I had like my mom was looking after the kids during these hours. I had help,
Mhm,
but I
mhm,
was in
mhm,
such a place of just neglecting myself. And I
mhm,
was so terrified and unhappy. And I didn't like who I was,
mhm,
you know, because I hadn't paid attention to who I was
Sure.
for decades. I didn't even know me.
Right. Or that we didn't know back then that our outer world reflects our inner world. You
Exactly,
know?
exactly. Or
Yeah,
that we don't actually have any control over external circumstances.
right,
And I
right.
thought I needed to control everything.
Of course,
And when I
perfectionism.
was
Yeah.
exactly, and when I wasn't able to, I just felt like a failure and
Mhm,
I felt terrified. And I thought, I can't make anything work. And what started at that point for me was this journey of self discovery and finally asking myself, what do I need and what matters to me?
I
And
love it.
that started this journey of real introspection. And I think it was 7 years later, I should count the number of years later. I then went back to orthodontics, opened up a new practice, but this time from a place of true understanding of who I was and what matters to me, and started a whole new business from values that were important and reflective of what I need as a human being, and set myself up for success from that standpoint. And all of a sudden, I grew this practice to be the most successful ortho practice in the state. I was the number one Invisalign provider, all because I now stopped listening to other
Of
people's
course.
algorithm of success and
Yeah.
started paying attention to what I want. And then I fell in love with it. And
Uh-huh.
then I was loving what I did. And I went to work every day. I was like the happiest person because I told myself I'm getting out at 4 o'clock and I'm going to see my kids this evening,
Right. You were in
and
your power, not
I was
outsourcing it. Yeah.
exactly.
I love it.
And it was then that the team showed up, the
Of
money
course.
showed up,
Of
my
course.
marriage got better, my kids
Yes.
got better. When
Yes.
mama's feeling good, everybody, the ripple effect,
Overflow. Yes.
overflow. Yeah.
Okay.
And that is what led me to start the business of happiness, was just recognizing, oh, wait a minute, think I've figured this out. That success isn't what brings us happiness. It's
No.
happiness
We.
that brings us success.
Yes. Oh gosh, 1,000%. I love this so much. Can we
Yeah.
talk about the void for a second?
Please do jump right in.
Because that is where so many are. And because we kind of did a leap, right? Kind of just in that time period, are you saying that you did not, like you literally went inward, like you searched, did you put it all, I mean, first of all, like bravo to you, like for being self-aware, just to say something's gotta change and I've got to put these things down and look at me and do this inner work. I mean, so powerful. So how did you like know, I suppose at that time, like you felt it, obviously, like intuition. You were getting, okay, our soul is always speaking. So like you heard the inner voice, the voice that was like screaming, somehow it broke through. You heard it. It was like, okay, stop.
Right.
Stop. Um, so did you stop dentistry completely for how long? And then you took courses? Like how did you find or tap into courses, people, that kind of thing?
Oh, it's such a good question. I didn't know what I was looking for, and what
Mhm.
actually happened was by accident. What that was my first two babies I had when I was in my first practice. The first two, I owned two practices in the beginning, and in
Wow.
that really stressed place, my first two kids were born really prematurely. And
Mhm.
like 8 weeks prematurely. And the reason why now, when I look back, is because my
Body.
body was just washed in cortisol. I couldn't hold on to the pregnancy. I was so busy at work and stress. I
Mhm.
was back to work treating patients before my due date with both my first two babes. And both of them were born with these huge hematomas on their heads. Why? Because I had an epidural because I don't know. I was too early because I hadn't had the classes, right, on how to deliver. And I was, when I had the epidural, doing my best as we do in dentistry,
Oh.
working the hardest I possibly can. I pushed so hard. They both had these big
Mhm.
bruises on their heads and they had to be in the NICU for so long. And when I
Oh.
got pregnant with my third, I said, I'm going to do it differently. I want to do this naturally. I want to feel.
Mhm.
And so I started a hypnobirthing class.
I
And
did that too.
did you too?
I had a natural home birth for my
Did
first.
you really?
And a natural C-section.
Amazing.
Yes, girl. Yes, so good.
Well, it was the hypnobirthing class that led me to meditation and introspection. So it
Yes.
was a very circuitous way of getting there. But when I started learning how to calm my nervous system,
Mhm.
how to breathe, how to meditate, and how
Mhm.
to ask myself those really big questions. One of the questions in the hypnobirthing class in anticipation of delivery was, what are you afraid of? What are your fears? I'd never asked
Mhm.
myself those kinds of questions.
Of course, we're not taught that stuff. Yeah.
No. And that was really my uncovering of how to really ask myself what matters and what the meaning of success is to me and what my needs are. For so long, I think in dental school and in school in general, we keep looking to others for the
Yes.
solutions. And
Mhm.
we take this kind of account of everybody else's opinion before we ever ask ourselves, what do I think? What do I feel? And what is that intuitive voice inside of me? We're so busy chasing other things that we don't get quiet enough to even be aware of that intuitive voice inside of
Right.
ourselves.
Yeah,
And yeah,
well, I was just quick to insert on that
yeah.
is and today and where I just really struggle is the old paradigm of dentistry, especially with insurance companies, because they will forever continue to outsource their power as long as they are allowing
Hmm.
that, so it's difficult, which like I said, we can go there later, but that is a big part of it too, because it is really stepping into your power and you taking control of your life and not outsourcing it and giving it away. So to your point, right? Your team and you're taking care of everybody else. And then you become a doctor to practice the way you desire. And yet you can't do that either because you've cut yourself off from people. Not only the insurance company is dictating to you what you can charge, but then you've trained your patients now to ask you constantly, when you are coming from your heart space on what it is that you're recommending, and they're saying, but what does the insurance cover? And not looking at you as the human, it's so cyclically like, blah.
Well, I will speak to that for a moment just to address that. Many times we feel like we're so limited in our options because of other external circumstances, as you're mentioning the insurance company.
Mhm.
And what I've learned is we always have choice,
Yes.
even when it looks like we don't, even when it
Yes.
looks like we're backed into a corner and I don't have a choice. I remember saying that so often in my life. Well, I don't have a choice. I have to XYZ. And what I've learned is we always have a choice. And
Decision.
it's always that place that sometimes feels far away when we're in a place of stress.
Mhm.
That sympathetic nervous system, we know this from dental school, it narrows our vision, it narrows our concept of what is possible. And the bigger truth is, there are always limitless possibilities. And
Yes.
when we can allow ourselves to just rise above and take even just a breath or a pause and calm our nervous systems down enough, I think so much of what we've been inundated with is a lot of mindset positivity, which I love positive psychology. I preach it all the time. But we
Yeah.
forget that we live in a human body
Mhm.
and that human body is dictated by our nervous system. And
Mhm.
sometimes in our nervous systems, in that fight or flight, we literally cut off access to executive function. And part of executive function is the ability to gain higher perspective.
Right.
But anytime I've ever felt myself say, well, I'm left without a choice. I have this or this. I always use that as an indicator that there's something more that I'm not able to see in this moment, that there are always possibilities, even when it looks like the insurance company is banging down your door or limiting your ability to change your fee structure or to reach a certain population in your community. There are always more options available to you. It's really our job to navigate how to have that perspective, navigate how to
Right.
find that broader perspective.
Yeah, to understand duality, there's the opposite to everything, right? Black and white.
Absolutely.
So to again access your inner wisdom and knowing that everything is absolutely a decision,
Hmm.
because it is the fear. It's the fear that takes over. But I always looked, I mean, I opened my practice fee for service from the get, even though I was told I wouldn't make it and whatnot. Because again, I have been in touch. I have always done the personal development track next to the CE track for as long as I can remember. It's just who I am. Like you growing up in the happiness, just all of it, that life is such a gift and it's just like you said, there are infinite possibilities and you have infinite potential in you to do anything, you desire. And we outsource that and we lose that connection. But we're here, I believe, like as humans to find our way back, right?
Yes.
To tapping back into that in our own time. That's why we're here too. I believe, and why we
100% to
yeah,
remember the truth of who we are, which is that we're
yeah,
so much more powerful than we realize.
yes,
And I
yes.
think that in dentistry, it's such a unique example of human experience. And
Mm.
we get told how small we are
Ugh,
constantly, constantly, constantly. And we use external validation to confirm that and affirm our not enoughness, our, worthlessness. And I always reflect on things like Google reviews or patient feedback, and we carry so much weight on those things,
mm.
forgetting that they're just data. It's just data.
It's
And has
projections based on someone else's lens of them. It's not even you.
absolutely. It's got absolutely nothing to do with your worth.
No.
Absolutely nothing. And it's so interesting that dentistry can be that reflection to us. And when we can step outside of it and realize that none of it matters. And I think this is where our conversation was starting before
Yes.
we jumped on the podcast recording is nothing outside of us actually matters.
Love it
Nothing.
so much.
Which is a very difficult thing to grasp when you're in the thick of it. You know,
Totally.
when
It's
I was in
taking
that
work.
place,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, when
Yeah.
I was in that place with two babies in diapers and a practice barely surviving, and my husband living in another state, and I was having migraines every single day, I think if someone said to me, Taryn, none of this matters, just kind of get over it. None of this
Sure.
matters. I might have punched them in the face.
Yeah.
It feels so heavy when you're in it.
Yes.
And the one thing that each of these difficult experiences allows us to realize is we get our own learning from it.
Hmm.
And every single difficult situation that anyone who's listening has ever lived through,
Hmm.
there's one consistent truth is you've lived through it. You've
Yes.
come through it.
Yes.
You have survived 100% of the challenges that you've experienced.
And
And
learned.
every one of them had learning.
Yes.
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 Every one of them has brought you closer to remembering the truth of who you are, which
Yes.
is completely limitless.
But who are you? This is when here's the thing for in dentistry, it's like you go through. So for me, I took a gap year, then I did dental hygiene for 2 years, then I practiced hygiene, and then I went to dental school. Why? Because I wanted to live, because I wanted to
Ah,
play with my friends after college. Like I didn't want to go direct. I knew that I would be slammed, right? But when I look at those that did, they never got a moment, a pulse, a break. Going from, like I said, the first of all, we have all the old programming from the past that we're
mhm.
carrying. And then, like I said, just all of this schooling. And to your point, you're not enough and you're small. And then you graduate into the space where you are working in a very small space with, I think, the only profession that really hits on the spiritual, emotional, mental, physical, all four quadrants. I think it's like one of the only ones that takes on every category. Besides the fact, and I know you probably know too, like depending on your energy type, like human design, I don't know if you've studied it, but like some of us aren't meant. I'm a Manny Gen. I have a lot of energy. I can do a lot, you know, take on a lot. But there are some people that are projectors, for example, that their energy, you have to be very aware of your space and your energy. But without the awareness, that makes
Yeah.
it even quadruple fold difficult. And so I love what we're talking about, which is, I mean, really, like I said, it's becoming self-aware and also realizing that I want to sing like nothing else matters, that Metallica song, because
Yeah.
nothing else does at the end of the day. I think we touched on this in the beginning too before we hit play was um that we need to be okay to
Mm.
bubble over, energetically. We need to take care of ourselves first and fill our cup, obviously, to flow over to everyone else, our families, our teams,
Yeah.
etc. And our patients pull a lot of our energy,
Yeah.
um, just even being in their field, let alone
Yeah.
they don't even have to speak. So I think energetics is really a big
It's
topic
such a
here.
big part. And don't you think it's crazy we don't learn about energetics in
Yes,
dental school?
yes.
We are literally in people's mouths and we don't learn about energetics. And it breaks my heart when I hear dentists say to me, I'm so exhausted at the end of the day, or I'm so depleted.
Mhm.
And it makes so much sense because we've
Yes.
been taking on other people's energy.
Mhm.
90% of our patients have some experience of dental trauma, phobia,
Yes.
pain, and that's who we treat,
Yep.
are people who are uncomfortable in
Mhm.
some way. And all day to be experiencing that and not protecting your energy is exhausting.
We'll
So,
compound it on you already lacking
yep, not getting enough sleep because you've been up all night worrying about
about the Yelp review.
the Yelp review.
Yeah.
Then add on to that you're going one patient after another, and the number of dentists who don't take a break during lunch and who
Yes.
stay after work,
Oh,
to keep doing chart notes. No
yes.
wonder we're exhausted.
And
No
running
wonder.
rooms, like what is that?
It's
I
crazy.
never did that, but I've been in some practices and I'm like, what?
I know. I
No
know.
lunch and this and like again, it's like looking back at, why did you become a dentist and what what was your dream? What was your vision? What did that look like? Like you had mentioned when you finally created the ideal, perfect dream practice, it was leaving at 4 o'clock. It was,
Oh,
you stood by, you created boundaries and you
yes.
lived by them. And that again was because you decided, you made a decision. And guess what? The universe conspired to deliver that.
Yes. Yes. And, I think one of the biggest discoveries I had in that journey, in order to design it, in order to allow the universe to conspire to bring me what I was looking for and to allow me to feel good, I uncovered some really interesting limiting beliefs that I think are really embedded in dentistry as a whole. I think so many of us believe these things about us. And I don't know, I think some of us are attracted to dentistry because we start with that limiting belief. But one of the limiting beliefs I had was success takes hard work.
hmm Good
And
one.
that meant that if I ever didn't work hard, it wasn't really worthy of success or feeling celebrated or feeling successful. And what that also meant is I needed to burn myself down to the ground if I wanted to be successful. And there is nothing further from the truth. Success is actually ease and
Flow.
flow. And to me that sounded insane at the time. But my life has proven it to me over and over again. When I am in a place of flow and ease and honoring rest, honoring space, honoring what I need, it becomes easy. And I know, once again, it feels so difficult to hear when you're in the thick of it. And I've had, so many people say, but Taryn, you don't understand my situation. And I know I would have said the same thing. And it is the undeniable truth. We're not meant to burn ourselves down in service to others because we are not worth what we can give when we are exhausted and depleted. We can give so much more from a place of wholeness and having taken care of ourselves first.
But this goes back to the energetic piece and
Yes.
what we're not taught, because dentistry is in an old paradigm of masculine.
Hmm.
Okay, so you've got the duality of the yin to the yang, the feminine to the masculine. And to your point, because same with me, I loved hustle culture. I was running
Mm.
3 brick and mortar different businesses, and I had a live-in nanny, and I would stay after work to do all the things. And like, okay, that was my heaven on earth back when. Oh, quantum leap down here, and I leaned into, found my feminine and the flow and now the fun worked, but the reason why I manifested and created was definitely a hard pushing, grinding kind of like in the masculine. But what I found here is you can be as successful in ease and flow and, like you said, just literally play and creation from your imagination. Like, it's when you get your best downloads, whether for any business, for our lives, truly our soul is always there, like speaking silently. If you can get quiet enough to hear, you're always getting directed. It's your inner GPS guiding you. And but I do believe, like, again, back to that, it's not something I learned that later. So not only that, then I began to explore and plug into masterminds and female entrepreneurs and groups and learn this for me, being introspective. So as you did in your journey, I continued on mine, and I believe we're students of life anyway, growth and evolution over lifetime. Which, for anyone listening as well, if you haven't explored things other than, more CE about teeth, because already I do feel like a lot of dentists, I'm sure you've worked with them too, and they're like, but I can't do anything else. I I could never, and that fear and that ego just like comes in so strong. And we're both here to show you that you can, absolutely, right? It goes back to that decision, but it doesn't mean pull the blanket up, just go
Hmm.
cold. You just start to baby step your way into trying different things on, throw out what you don't want, but start to get to know you and explore you and what's out there. Like, especially the universe, like you said, breath work will take you home.
Oh my gosh, it's so powerful. It's so powerful. And I think when we can just put our skepticism to the side
Yes.
and reach beyond, there's such a bigger world. And I hope whoever's listening can hear this and let this be your
Understand.
permission slip
Yes.
that there is such a bigger world beyond dentistry. And like you said, we don't have to burn it all down and tear apart your practice and become a yoga teacher. Although, if
Right.
that's for you, that's awesome.
Yes.
But there is such a beautiful way to incorporate these concepts and practices in dentistry. And I really believe that it's so necessary. And I love what you touched on in terms of the masculine and the feminine. And I really believe that when we allow ourselves to balance those two beautiful aspects of ourselves, because there's time and space for the
Yeah.
masculine, there is time
Definitely.
and space for the masculine to step in and get shit done
Uh-huh.
in devotion to the feminine's direction.
Yeah.
And when we do it from that place, it's not just as successful. I believe it's more successful
Yes.
because it's really allowing ourselves to be who we are, which is a beautiful combination of both, of masculine and feminine. And that really is where our power lies.
You know what just kind of dropped into my space? I don't know where this came from, but I was just thinking about women now. So for my practice, I always dressed up. This past summer, there was a dentist here that last summer asked me, like, someone didn't show up, and she said, can you come and help or whatever? And anyway, I had to wear scrubs. And I remember speaking to a friend who's a dentist. I was like, boxed her that morning, and I said, I'm wearing black scrubs and I feel like a crow. And she's like, Jessica, you're a ninja. You're a ninja warrior. And I was like, yes, I am. Okay.
I
But
love it.
but think about it. If
Mm.
in practice too, as a woman, like a woman, and you're having to dress up in scrubs every day, that's just one more layer to not really feeling into your feminine. And the reason what this makes me think about is when we had our nanny, one night, I think it was like I tried to schedule a date night, right? To have that date night every Friday. And I remember running upstairs and just not even showering, but like pony hair, don't care, took out my ponytail, whatever, came back down half-assed basically, where my nanny was like, Senorita. And she like spun me around. She was like, you get back and you put yourself together, kind of thing. Which when I did, I got in the shower. I actually did my hair. I put on some makeup and I just tapped into my feminine essence that then I brought to my husband, which of course, in our relationship then, because we know all of these things in the wheel of life are tied, they all affect one another. And I feel like in dentistry, like we were saying, when you're staying after, and it becomes so all consuming, it takes over.
Yeah.
So really to even identify, actually, if the breath work is like go really kind of tapping, but even if you start journaling and write down the different categories in life, like love, health, like what are the things that you desire, and want for your life, and revisit that, because also in dentistry, that's not something that's done. How about it's KPIs? And guess what? You didn't make 1 million this year. You failed. Start at zero again in January. Like, no, let's celebrate the fact that you've made, 1 million, or you almost every single year. And now you're, an 8-figure earner, whatever, what have you, whatever that means. It doesn't mean anything, right? But it's like the failure component and
Yeah.
the kind of the loss of the feminine and like who we are. And it really is. I feel like both of us are on the same page with this, like, oh, it's coming back to you are. And again, you do this by yourself. So it's so freaking lonely.
Yeah.
Like,
Very
I wish,
insular.
right,
Mhm.
more of us could come together,
Yeah.
to just together we rise, to bring the wisdom that we each individually have uniquely to one another, because we're mirrors of one another. And it's so
Yes.
helpful.
And that's another beautiful feminine power. I love how this conversation has turned to understanding the masculine and feminine. Another beautiful feminine power is community. And we do
Mhm,
it so well. We're so good at lifting each other up.
mhm,
We're so good at collaborating and connecting and nurturing one another. And the toxicity of that masculine, wounded masculine in dentistry that so many of us took on in terms of competition and needing to pit one another against one another or fight for resources, in this case, patience. And it's such a beautiful moment for us to recognize as women, we do it really well in another way. And
mhm,
the greatest success is now measuring success from a monetary standpoint, which is also not the only measure of success by any stretch of the imagination, but measuring success of a practice from a monetary standpoint. My greatest successes were when I collaborated with the other orthodontists in
yes,
the
of
community,
course.
when I started a study club for all the orthodontists in the community. And
Yes.
that is such an important thing to remember as well. There's another way of doing this, and
Mhm,
it is when it's aligned with you. And I think another thing we've lost touch with is paying attention to how you feel,
mhm,
because that is such a great indicator of when you are off or out of alignment with your inner truth or your inner wisdom. If it
mhm.
doesn't feel good,
Yes.
something's going on. Pay
Yes.
attention. And so often we were taught to just push through, push past. We'd show
Yeah.
up to work anyway. We have, 10, in my case, 60 patients scheduled. I can't just say no when something feels wrong. I got to show up anyway. And we keep bypassing those really important messages coming from our bodies, which are
Oh,
so
yeah.
wise, so wise. And that feminine intuition is so powerful if we choose to listen to it.
Acknowledge and yeah, tap in, because as you mentioned earlier in this conversation, it can it can override. Like I had a miscarriage. I was extracting a tooth and I finished the whole procedure before I went. But
Oh,
like,
stop
but
it.
I, but it's all good in part of the whole process, right? But I was in that masculine, like not listening to my body, which I'm saying many of us don't, like I said, tune in that this can wait. Like we take precedence, of it. And the tuning into ourselves, and just to speak to the collective, which you said, which is so powerful. And I speak to this all the time, and I'm sure you do too, but back to energy is that we calibrate to the people we're around. So people have heard you are the five people you hang around with. And of course, with a team, this is different. You're the leader, right? Like, and we all know eliminate the one that's not right. Make sure that your team is who you want, but you're still leading. But I'm talking about women that are shoulder to shoulder walking together,
Yeah.
right? As one, supporting one another. And when you are staying plugged into that energy, you will always be elevated.
Yeah.
This is so
Beautiful.
important because I see women plug in and then unplug and plug in and
Mm,
then unplug, and I just say to you, trust the
mm,
process. It is the best thing you could ever do with whom it's to invest in a mentor, a mastermind, a group, whomever that you feel in your body
mm-hmm.
you are in resonance with. Like, feel and trust that instinct and go there because there's something there for you. And even if you sit in silence and you listen, you will gain wisdom. A lot of times, what I have found, you sit at the table and someone will say something that you are thinking.
Yeah.
And you can, like I said, try things on, throw them out. But you will stay, your energy will naturally, because they start to shift, and raise without, like I said, just being where it wants to go. Because just like a thermometer in a room, it will go back to what is your net neutral.
Yeah,
Uh,
and it's so interesting because women know we know this before
yeah.
we're even taught this. We
Mhm.
know this on a very intimate level.
Mhm.
I'm going to go back to, and I don't know how many people in your audience have had this experience, but with my two babies, I mentioned they were my early pregnancies. Both my first two babies were in the NICU for a long time. And one of the things that they have you do in the NICU, for all the moms who have NICU experience, you put your baby on your chest, bare chest, because, and they call it kangaroo care,
Mhm.
because the baby can't regulate its temperature, because two preemie can't do it. The mom's body literally raises its temperature, senses baby's temperature is low. The mom's body raises its temperature to warm the baby. That is something we know how to do. It's in our bones. We don't even have to use intellect. We don't have to use thought. Our bodies are so brilliant. And the energetic awareness and sharing in that moment. And that's such a great example of what you're talking about. When we're
Yes.
in a room together,
Mhm.
we calibrate
Mhm.
and support one another. And it
Yes.
is so powerful. We know how to do this
Yes.
so beautifully from a really generations ago. We've been doing this and we've forgotten the power of really who we are. And speaking back again to the beginning of our conversation of this whole beautiful journey of life is only to remember how powerful we really are and who we really are. And
Yes.
and when we're in community with one another, we tap into that. We decrease that refractory period so much faster. I want
Yes.
to know sooner. I want to know now.
Yes. Give me the
And
seat
so
in the rocket. Yeah.
I know, right? So put me in
Nice.
the room with women who are resonating and vibrating at that vibrational state so that I can be there faster. Because, and that is, it's so beautiful when that happens.
Yes. And when you're speaking about the babies, like, let's all take a pulse for a second and think about the fact that our heart is beating on its own right now, that we're breathing on our own right now. Like, our body innately, like,
Yeah.
how magic the wisdom that is enough to tap into to show you that you have that wisdom and the power. But again, you're outside of yourself, searching outside of yourself for everything or for answers that you already have within you. And this is why, back to the community and that collective, when they're mere somebody can, you can be spinning and someone will see that and be able to just see it and mirror back like the power to you. And then you recheck and you're like, oh, that's right. Woo, you know what I
Mm.
mean? And you come back and you come back and it's just so good and it's so powerful. And I just love this. And I think to circle up, because I know I could just talk to you all
We
day.
could go all day long.
I feel
This
like
is
we should have a
fun.
big retreat on
I
all of
know.
this for women. But really the breath, and I know you like you would probably say, because I'm going to ask you this question here to round it out, but coming back to calming your nervous system, because I think this is so important. And if anybody can take away something from today, because we could go deep. I feel it. We could go off on so many tangents. But that breath of stepping outside of the op, or if you get caught up in your head to drop down back into your body, that is self-regulate, like, your nervous system. And to know as well that there's just so much just old programming running
Yeah.
here that you can write new code to, right? That oh, it just all gets to be so good. What would you like to leave the audience with today? What would you say to your younger self, looking back in reflection, knowing all that you do now?
Yeah, I think just a reminder that you're so much more powerful than you realize, and so much more powerful than you're giving yourself credit for. And you don't need anyone outside of you to tell you what to do or how to do it. In
Mhm.
fact, no one knows what you need like you do. And to reiterate what you said, Jessica, about giving yourself permission to pause. And yes, we use breath work is such a great way to do it because it's accessible, it's free, it's easy. You can do it behind a mask, you can do it between patients. But if you're playing with this and you're like, okay, I'm breathing, what are you talking about? One suggestion is close your eyes. That helps me because it just cuts out visual stimulation, right? More stimulus to your brain, and allow your exhale to be longer than your inhale because biologically that's helping you tap into your vagus nerve, parasympathetic nervous system, but giving yourself a moment. And I don't just mean one moment, I mean throughout the day in your
Mhm.
dental practice. Giving yourself those little pauses, those little breaks, that was a turning point for me. Because we think if I meditate in the morning and I have a gratitude practice at night, I'm cool. And for 15 hours a day between those two very valuable practices, I highly recommend if what you're doing is throwing yourself into the fire, you're going to be spinning out and living outside of your own body all day long. So
Mhm.
giving yourself permission. And one of the biggest things I wish we could just create as a new norm in dentistry is taking a true lunch break,
Yeah,
getting literally
walking,
leaving
walking.
outside the office, move your body,
Yep,
breathe deep breaths, and
yep,
separate yourself energetically from that space. It's
yes.
you deserve it, your patients deserve it, your
Mhm.
kids that you're returning to tonight deserve it,
Mhm.
and giving yourself just permission to rest. And that's another thing. I think, oh my gosh, I'm having such deja vu right now, Jessica.
You are?
I am. That was really interesting. I
Oh, I
thought, oh my
love it.
gosh,
I'm
did
like,
I
what?
have this conversation before with you?
Oh, I love it.
Weird. Um, that threw me off. But giving yourself permission to rest, giving yourself permission to rest. And no, you don't need anybody else's permission. We come right back to that conversation of choice. It's your choice. You do not need anybody's permission to cancel engagements, to take a break, to say no, to change your mind.
Yes.
It is such an empowering and liberating place to realize, you mean I can call that person and say, I changed my mind? Yes, you
Mhm.
can.
Yep.
Yes, you can. You mean I can actually cancel that patient's appointment? Yes, you can.
Mhm.
And I'm saying things that feel completely heretic, but are so important to recognizing the power that you have in your own life to create your own reality.
Yes.
Yeah.
Versus learning more and just getting quote
Hmm.
unquote educated.
Hmm.
Transformation comes from integration. And this
Hmm.
goes back to like really going back in and tapping in. So during those lunches, look around. There are signs everywhere, like breadcrumbs being dropped on your path. Life gets to be so incredibly magical when your eyes are open.
Yes.
Trust, I would say trust, 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 breathe,
Hmm.
trust, know you're going to be okay no matter what. This one beautiful, precious life you get is so short. Do
Mm,
you, boo?
I know. And I love that you brought up magic because I think we've tabooed that as well for so long. But all magic is play. And
Yes.
what's the point of life if we're not having fun? What's the
Girl,
point?
yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
allow yourself to feel the magic and to notice the red cardinal flying by the window.
Yes. And the
Why?
angel numbers. Yes.
Why not? This is the whole point. All those beautiful things are permission slips to feel good and let them be messages from the universe because they are. Whatever you create for yourself is true for you and it matters. And it's so important because they're all little whispers reminding you of how powerful you really are. And,
Yes.
I think I'd love to, if I may, just leave your audience with this is just a little recognition from an outside perspective. Just notice how much you already are capable of. I
Mm.
think we don't give ourselves credit. We don't look back and say, holy moly, Tarryn, you gave birth to three human beings who are now out there in the world doing
Hmm.
that is incredible. You
Yes.
gave birth to three practices that are now living in the world, delivering
Yes.
care to
Yes.
incredible needing people in need. We don't step back enough and say, wow, look at the impact I've already made and the ripple effect of all that you've already done. And when you give yourself that permission, you realize I am capable of so much. And then it just becomes play
Hmm.
because none of it is eternal. None of it is permanent. It's
Hmm.
all, these kids are going to grow up and leave the house. This practice is going to move on and either burn to the ground or it's going to become somebody else's practice one day. None of it is permanent, which means we have the permission to play in this moment and allow ourselves to try new things and
Yes.
try something that feels good and try a taste a new. I always imagine standing in front of a buffet table and
Mhm.
trying something and thinking, oh, that looks delicious. And you taste it and you think, nah, no thanks. Let me try something else. We get to do that in life, even in dentistry. And it does not mean you're a failure. Just because you picked up a sushi roll that wasn't your favorite, we don't tell ourselves I failed.
Right.
If you then say, oh, you know what? I started this practice and it really doesn't suit me so much anymore. Let me try something else. That is zero indication of your worth or your failure, or it's just choice. It's just choosing a new path. And if
Yes.
your goal is feeling good and following your highest excitement,
Mhm.
that is all you need. That is your directional compass.
All you need. The universe is the quantum Costco. It's all
Wow.
available for you. Tap into your inner child and go get it. Oh my
Oh
God.
my God.
I'm
Jessica, I've
just,
never heard that before. The quantum Costco. My
yes,
gosh.
everything. You just said reminded me with the buffet. I'm like, it's all there. It's all
Yeah.
there. And when you create that vision in your head, it drops in. Like I said, the universe doesn't know the difference. So it's just, y'all, it gets to be so magical. We're gonna park it there
Yes, we are.
because there's so much. Where can people find you?
Yes, the Business of Happiness is the podcast that I host, which I'm so excited to have Jessica to have you on.
Oh,
But yeah, find me at the Business of Happiness or at thebizofhappiness.com.
I love it. We're
Mm.
so aligned. I know it's like happy CEO and the business of happiness,
Oh, how crazy is that?
right? The happy, I know, but it makes sense. And
Mm.
as you were saying earlier, nothing happens by coincidence. It's all part
Yeah,
of the path and
so
part of
fun.
the game of life. So thank you all for joining us today. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. And thank you so much, Dr. Taryn.